This is an important message about our city's budget. I refuse to be gaslit any longer on the state of our city's real finances.
There is no doubt that we have a number of difficult choices and painful cuts regardless that we have to make. But there's one option in front of us today that, in my opinion, cannot be considered a real option because it will lead to years of financial ruin for this city and threats to millions of dollars of existing funding that support our basic city services. This budget process is an insult to the people of Oakland. I wholeheartedly support the sale of the Coliseum to AASCG, and I voted for it proudly. But I did make the deep mistake of putting my trust in our mayor and city administration that this deal would go through in time to use for this year's fiscal budget, and I regret that level of trust that I placed in them. We simply do not know when this incredibly complex deal will be finalized. And I am deeply disappointed in the choice to even consider using Coliseum sale proceeds in the originally submitted budget, given that others in the city did know the realities of what we're facing in our state of negotiations before we did. 3 days before today's budget meeting, in what only appears to be an effort to tie the hands of council and steamroll us into an irresponsible vote, we were presented at the 11th hour with an impossible choice. One budget option that speaks against the values of the majority of Oaklanders to prioritize public safety, and the other that is a wildly irresponsible and utterly practical choice. What else is at risk? If we don't get this initial tranche, an installment payment of $15 million that's right now slated in this option 1, we have to, quote, put the brakes on our spending. And it's going to lead to a worse situation than is before you being proposed right now. What's at stake? Everyone's concerned that we're going to go down to 610 officers, but we will then go down to 600. We're concerned now that one proposed budget would lead to 4 brownouts of fire stations, but if this money doesn't come in on time, we will go to 5 brownouts of fire stations. What else is at stake? The freezing of Department of Violence Prevention ceasefire positions rather than delayed hire, eliminating vacant positions rather than just delaying them. Let's talk about contracts. We know very well what's going on with the state of city contracts not being given to individuals and organizations on time. We know festivals like Art and Soul just got canceled because despite having approval from the city council, a contract was not executed and money didn't go out the door to over 40 different arts and cultural organizations. What will happen if we don't get $15 million from the proceeds of this deal by September 1st? None of these organizations promised contracts by city will get them for the foreseeable future. We are putting the brakes on absolutely everything if and when we don't get this money. Contracts for violence prevention, contracts for paving, so much more will be impacted if we get into this dreaded contingency situation. So I submitted 2 different rounds of amendments to the originally proposed budget. One jointly with Councilmember Reed and Councilmember Gallo that prioritize public safety. But just to be clear, the priorities in these budget amendments continue to be exactly for what we're advocating today. Funding civilian OPD positions and avoiding drastic officer cuts, funding grant writing positions in the fire department, fire inspectors, and avoiding brownouts, and of course, our plan for having a comprehensive East Oakland Community Safety Ambassador program in the Diamond and Laurel, in Hagenberger, and in Fruitville. So the bottom line is none of these budgets in front of us is in line with our values today, and no one is tying our hands to pass either one today. I have no doubt that painful cuts are gonna have to be made from a lot of places, but they do not have to be the cuts proposed to us today, and legally don't have to be voted on today or Tuesday. With 3 days to review this new budget, and in my perspective, the only viable budget proposal, yet an 8-day process to work through and submit amendments as council members with our finance team, there's no possible way to get any amendments in by Tuesday. Directing the city administrator to take all actions needed to extend this process by another month, using next Tuesday's council meeting on July 2nd to hold a study session on the proposed alternatives with each and every department head explaining this new proposed budget and other potential cuts. And the following week, hosting a combined all-council budget town hall with a comprehensive window for community feedback. Then providing council members with a 1-week window to consult with finance and publish amendments. And then finally, in the final week of July, to discuss and vote on these amendments. I do support the sale of the Coliseum to AASCG. And if funds do appear faster than we believe, it is perfectly reasonable and possible for council to open back our budgets and amend it when Coliseum sale comes in. It is always more responsible to add money once we get it in later than assume we have money that we don't. And I urge my fellow council members here today, through their votes, to tell the world that the buck stops here with Oakland's history of poor fiscal planning and a lack of transparency. The irresponsible choice means that we will face even lower numbers of officers than what's proposed now. More brownouts, contracts being frozen, and so much more.